Clovis I, the young and audacious king of the Salian Franks, defeated Remigius, the last Roman commander in Gaul, and thus he ended once and for all the imperial presence in the former Roman territory. But victory, far from being pure glory, brought new dilemmas and responsibilities. 10 years have passed since that decisive clash, and the consolidation of Clovis' power became an ongoing challenge to keep the Franks united. To rule a kingdom divided between pagan traditions and the growing influence of Christianity, and to deal with the complex web of political alliances with other barbarian peoples and surviving Roman elites. At the heart of this whirlwind of choices, an event arose that would forever change the destiny of Europe: the Baptism of Clovis, a moment where sword and faith would meet, shaping the future of a kingdom and announcing the rise of Christian France. If you haven't seen the previous episode yet, at the end of this video, I'll leave the link on the screen and the complete playlist in the description. So, subscribe to the channel and get ready, time travelers, to dive into a story of blood, courage, and conviction. Today, we shall witness the moment when a barbarian king becomes the champion of the Christian faith, and the Middle Ages take a new course. Welcome to the Fall of Thrones, where we explore the secrets of medieval history from 3 unique perspectives. This will change the way you see the past. Clovis was only 29 years old when he became the undisputed lord of northern Gaul. Soissons 486 AD was not merely a battle, but the closing of an era. With the death of Remigius, Roman power gave way to Frankish steel, but victory brought more responsibilities than glory. Ruling a kingdom divided among pagans, Catholic Christians, and Arians was a delicate act of balance. The Frankish warriors still revered their ancestral gods, but Clovis realized that brute force alone would not be enough to unite his people. He needed legitimacy, and the Christian faith of his wife offered a path forward. Clotilde, a Burgundian princess, had lost her first child, but she saw divine signs in these events. For her, Clovis was destined for something greater. I know the sword conquered these lands, but will it be enough to keep them united? The Battle of Tolbiac, a decisive clash in European history, fought between the Franks under King Clovis and the Alemanni Confederation. The location: the ancient city of Tolbiac, today known as Zulpich, near Cologne, in the Rhine region. The traditional date is 496 AD, based on the writings of historian Gregory of Tours. However, new studies suggest a different date, possibly 506 AD. The battle was brutal and bloody. A true turning point: Frankish shields splintered under the Alemanni onslaught. Spears snapped in two. Screams of agony echoed through the valley at the critical moment. The Frankish front line began to falter. Victory seemed impossible. It was then that King Clovis, in an act of desperation, raised his eyes to the heavens. He made a vow, a plea to the god of his wife, Queen Clotilde. "God of Clotilde," he cried, "if you grant me victory today, I swear I shall convert to your faith and be baptized in your name." And then something changed. The course of the battle shifted decisively. The king of the Alemanni fell on the battlefield, leaderless. His army collapsed and fled. For Clovis, this was no mere coincidence. It was the answer to his prayer. But beyond legend lay strategy. Victory at Tolbiac had a colossal impact. It marked the definitive consolidation of Clovis' power. Tolbiac was more than a battle. It was the moment when a king's vow and a victory forged the destiny of a nation. The birth of what would become France. Clotilde carried in her heart a mixture of faith and pain. Princess of Burgundy, her childhood was marked by tragedy. Her father, King Chilperic II, was murdered on the orders of her own uncle Gundobad. Exiled from her homeland and deprived of family life, Clotilde found her greatest strength in her Christian faith. When she married Clovis, king of the Franks, it was not just a marriage, it was a meeting of destinies. She believed that God was at her side to guide him to the light of Christianity. The pain, however, did not abandon her. The death of Ingemar, her first son, and the second illness of Clodomir, her second, could have shaken any heart, but not hers. On the contrary, these trials reinforced her certainty that God had a greater plan for Clovis and for Gaul. When the king defeated the Alemanni at the Battle of Tolbiac, Clotilde knew that this was the decisive moment. Clovis, cornered and with the priests about to be defeated, made his desperate vow. If he won, he would abandon his pagan gods and convert to Christianity. Clotilde wept at his words and quickly summoned Remigius, Bishop of Reims, to prepare the way. Gradually, Clovis began to understand that faith could be as powerful as the sword. Clotilde was not just a queen, she became the living symbol of the Christianization of Gaul. Clovis, the Lord has chosen you for something greater. Do not defy the heavens, embrace them. Remigius, Bishop of Reims, didn't wield a sword, but he saw in Clovis the potential of a true king. Even before the Battle of Soissons, Remigius had been closely following the rise of the young Frankish sovereign. Astute and learned, he sought to get close to Clovis, offering him guidance and moral support whenever possible. Born into an influential Gallo-Roman family, Remigius was elected Bishop of Reims by popular acclaim, something unusual, as he had not yet received holy orders. Extremely literate and diplomatic, he understood that the Catholic faith could become a powerful instrument of political unification between the Franks and the Romans. Over time, he cemented ties with Clotilde, who was already trying to convince her husband to abandon paganism, and then came Tolbiac. The battle against the Alemanni was brutal. Clovis, on the verge of defeat, raised his gaze to the heavens and made his desperate vow. "If you grant me victory, O Christ of Clotilde, I will be baptized in your name." The victory was won. For Remigius, this was the sign. The moment had arrived. Baptizing Clovis would not be just an act of faith. It would be a strategic act. With the king converted, thousands of Frankish warriors would follow his example. Shortly thereafter, Clovis was baptized in Reims before 3,000 of his men, marking the beginning of the Christianization of the Franks. In the following years, Remigius would found new dioceses, weaken Arianism among the Germanic peoples, and transform Reims into the spiritual center of the kingdom, becoming the architect of a new religious order in Gaul. "Your Majesty, it was not the sword that won at Tolbiac, it was the hand of God. The Lord now awaits you to fulfill his promise." On Christmas Day, 496 AD, the great cathedral of Reims was filled. Warriors, dignitaries, priests, and onlookers. Incense perfumed the air. Torches cast light on the stained glass windows. Chanting echoed between the stone walls. Carrying a sacred and solemn tone, Clovis, dressed in a white robe, a symbol of purity, slowly approached the altar. Bishop Remigius, imposing, raised the chalice and declared in a firm voice, "Bow your head, Clovis. Burn what you once adored, and adore what you once burned." When the baptismal water touched his forehead, a roar of acclaim filled the assembly. Behind him, 3,000 Frankish warriors received the same sacrament, sealing the collective conversion of the people. There, Christian France was born there. Sword and cross met. Politics and faith intertwined. Past and future met. The baptism was not merely an act of faith. It was a masterful political maneuver. With it, Clovis sealed an alliance with the Church, guaranteeing legitimacy to his reign and uniting the Frankish tribes, until then divided. Under his command, this was the founding milestone of the Merovingian kingdom, a kingdom that would forever change the fate of Gaul. Clovis's baptism was not merely a religious rite, it was the birth of a new political and spiritual order. The alliance between the crown and the church consolidated the king's power, but it also brought challenges: court intrigue, ambitions, and Clotilde's burden as guardian of the faith. But that is only part of the story. In the next episode of The Fall of Thrones, Clovis, leading the Franks, will face Alaric II, king of the Visigoths, while Theodoric, leader of the Ostrogoths, tries to mediate, hoping to prevent war from consuming the entire region. It will be a decisive confrontation that will define the future of Gaul. It will strengthen the Merovingian dynasty, and it will show how courage, strategy, and faith can shape history. If you want to follow the real history of the Middle Ages, no fiction, no romanticization, subscribe to the channel. Tell us in the comments which of the three perspectives impressed you most in this episode. And remember, history is not about great men performing great deeds. It is about real people facing impossible choices. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us on this journey through the Middle Ages. Until next time, time travelers.